The first thing Catherine Jane asked for when she woke in the hospital was food. The nurse brought her a cup of broth, pale, institutional, the kind of thing made in quantities of 50 liters by someone who had never tasted it. Catherine lifted it to her lips and drank. She waited. She put the cup down. She asked for something else. The nurse brought crackers, individually wrapped, the kind that come in sleeves of 4. Catherine ate all 4 and sat very still and looked at the wall. "How are you feeling?" the nurse asked. "Fine," Catherine said. "I'd like to check out." They kept her another night for observation. She spent it eating everything on her tray with the focused attention of a woman performing a very important audit. And each time, the result was the same. Texture, temperature, the mechanical fact of chewing, but nothing beneath it. No depth, no information, just the physical fact of food being in her mouth, which turned out to be nearly meaningless without anything underneath. She checked out in the morning. She told her editor, Piet, that she'd had a minor episode, stress possibly, and would be back next week. She took a cab home. She stood in her kitchen for a long time looking at her refrigerator. Then she opened it and began eating everything inside. She had been a food critic for 19 years. Before that, she had trained as a chef, briefly, before realizing that she was better at describing what other people made than making things herself, a fact she had never fully forgiven herself for, though she'd built an elegant life around it. Her column ran in 3 publications. Her first book, a collection of essays on the semiotics of restaurant design, had sold respectably and been quoted in 2 architecture journals. She was not famous in the way that made people recognize her face, which was useful. She was famous in the way that made chefs nervous when her name appeared on a reservation, which was the only kind of fame that mattered to her. All of this was predicated on her palate, which was now gone. She kept this information to herself with the same precision she applied to everything else. She wrote her next 3 columns from memory and old notes, describing meals she'd eaten before the stroke with enough distance that they read as recent. Piet noticed nothing. The readers noticed nothing. This told her something she filed away without examining too closely. Private Journal, Entry 1. Tasted nothing again today. Tried black coffee, lemon juice directly from the fruit, a chili so aggressively spiced my eyes watered. Physical sensation intact. Taste? Absent. Consulting Dr. Murray privately next week. Not the hospital. I won't go back to the hospital. The soup arrived on a Wednesday, 3 weeks after the stroke. Her colleague Bastian brought it in a sealed container, slightly embarrassed. His mother had heard Catherine was unwell and had insisted. The mother was 74, Dutch, and apparently incapable of receiving news of another person's illness without immediately cooking something. Catherine accepted it because refusing would have required an explanation. She ate it alone at her desk after Bastian left. The first spoonful hit her like stepping into a cold room. She put the spoon down. She picked it up again. She ate slowly, methodically, the way she had once eaten everything, looking for the architecture of it, the thing underneath the thing. What she found was not flavor. What she found was an image, not visual but felt. A kitchen in winter. Low light, the specific quality of silence that exists in a house where someone has recently died. A chair that someone used to sit in. The soup was full of it, soaked through with a grief so old it had become structural, just part of how the woman made things, the way some cooks oversalt without noticing because their hands learned it decades ago. Catherine sat at her desk for a long time. Then she opened a new document and began to write. Private Journal, Entry 4. Work in theory. I am not tasting flavor. I am tasting emotional residue, whatever the cook carried while making the food. Bastian's mother? Grief. Long-standing, probably a lost husband based on the specific quality of it. Tested against restaurant delivery. 3 different places, all anonymous, tasted like distraction and mild resentment, consistent with people cooking food they don't care about. The barista who makes my morning coffee. Tired, but basically content. The bread from the bakery on Willow Street. The older baker, not the young one. His bread tastes like someone who is very proud of something small. Hers tastes like impatience. I don't know what to do with this information. I don't know what to do with any of this. Private Journal, Entry 7. Wrote the Hartman review today. 3 stars. Said the duck was transcendent. It wasn't. I mean, I don't know what it was. It tasted like a cook who was frightened of his head chef. Maybe that's transcendent. I don't know anymore what the word means. Sable had no social media presence, no website, a single listing in an online directory with an address, a phone number, and the words Contemporary European, reservation only. Catherine's source, a sommelier she trusted, one of 3 people in the city whose palate she rated above her own, texted her the address with no context, followed by, "Tell me what you think." She'd replied asking what he thought of it. He'd taken 18 hours to respond, which was unusual for him, and said only, "I'm not sure yet." She made a reservation under a false name. She went alone on a Thursday. The restaurant was on a street she knew but had never had reason to stop on, a service road running behind a row of converted warehouses, the kind of area that was in the process of becoming expensive and hadn't quite finished yet. The exterior was unmarked except for a small brass number. Inside, 12 tables, dark wood, lighting that was low without being theatrical. The staff moved quietly. The menu was fixed, 8 courses, no choices offered or invited. The amuse-bouche arrived. Catherine ate it. She set down her fork. She looked at the table. She looked at the other diners, 6 other tables occupied, couples mostly, eating in a silence that she had initially read as the comfortable silence of people who knew each other well. She looked again. Their eyes were slightly unfocused. Not drunk. Something else. They ate slowly, returning to their plates with a regularity that looked almost compulsive. She looked back at her plate. Fear. That was the only word for what she was tasting. Clean, sustained, architectural fear. Not a spike of it, not a flash, but the deep background hum of a person who had lived inside terror so long that it had become the medium they worked in. It was in everything. The amuse-bouche, the bread, the butter, which she tasted from the dish with her fingertip. All of it. The same note, unwavering, the way a tuning fork holds its pitch, regardless of what else is happening in the room. She ate 3 courses. Then she folded her napkin, placed it on the table, and left. She sat in her car outside for 53 minutes. She knew it was 53 minutes because she watched the clock. It seemed important to be precise about something. Private Journal, Entry 12. Went back to Sable. Different name, different table, same thing. All 8 courses this time. By the 4th course, I had stopped trying to find anything underneath the fear and started trying to map it. Its texture, its consistency, whether it changed across the meal. It doesn't change. It is the same from the first course to the last. Whatever this person is carrying, they have been carrying it for a very long time. It has become their baseline. The other diners. I've been thinking about the other diners. 3 of the tables tonight had people I'd seen on my first visit. Not couples, individuals, eating alone, who I'd initially assumed were halves of couples who'd stepped away. They weren't. They come alone. They come back. They sit with this food that is saturated with someone else's terror, and they eat it slowly, and they come back. I don't think they know what they're tasting. I think they feel it without naming it. I think some people find that feeling, that low, specific dread, comforting in a way they could never explain to anyone. I think I understand that more than I'd like to. The chef's name was Duvall. She found it through the holding company that held the lease on the building, a chain of paper entities that took her 2 weeks and a favor from a journalist friend to unravel. Christophe Duvall, 51, formerly of 3 well-regarded restaurants, the last of which, a small, highly praised place called Mare, had closed 8 years ago following a kitchen accident. A young sous chef named Remy Arnaud, 26, had died. The accident had been ruled negligence. A pressure vessel, a piece of equipment that should have been decommissioned, that Duvall had apparently been aware needed replacing and had not replaced, a decision made under the ordinary financial pressure of running a small restaurant that was not quite profitable enough. One decision among dozens made that month. The one that happened to kill someone. Duvall was not charged. He lost the restaurant anyway, the insurance, the press, the investors. Then he lost the next thing, and the next. A divorce that had apparently been coming regardless, but arrived then, specifically then, with the timing of something designed to be maximally damaging. He disappeared from the industry. No reviews, no citations, no trail for 6 years. Then Sable. Catherine sat with this information for 4 days before she went back. Private Journal. Entry 17. I keep thinking about Remy Arnaud. 26. I looked him up. There's almost nothing. A photo from a culinary school graduation, a few tagged posts on a dormant social account. He liked football. He had a sister. I keep thinking about what it would mean to cook every day inside the memory of that. To plate food, to season, to adjust, all of it inside the room of what you did and cannot undo. I keep thinking that this might not be a story about a dangerous man. I keep thinking it might be worse than that. She got into the kitchen on her 4th visit. She'd tipped the front-of-house manager, not obviously, not clumsily, but in the way that certain doors in this industry opened with the right name mentioned to the right person and a patience for waiting. She said she was a culinary student writing a thesis on technique. She said she'd heard about the kitchen from a friend. These were both lies, but they were the right size and shape for the situation. Duvall was smaller than she'd expected. She didn't know why she'd expected anything. There was no photograph of him she'd been able to find. But she had built a version of him in her head over 4 visits and 2 weeks of research. And the person standing over the pass was not that version. He was slight, gray-haired, with the economical movements of someone who had spent 30 years in kitchens and learned that efficiency was its own kind of grace. He looked up when she came in and looked back down at his work without asking who she was. The staff moved around him without speaking. The kitchen was the quietest she had ever been in. She watched for 20 minutes before he spoke. "You came 4 times," he said, not looking up. She said nothing. "Different names. You're not a culinary student." He plated something with 3 precise movements. "What do you want?" She had prepared several versions of this conversation. She used none of them. "I want to tell you what your food tastes like," she said. He looked up then. She told him. Not everything, not the journal, not the research, not Remy Arnaud by name, because she wasn't sure she had the right to say that name in this room. But she told him what she tasted. She told him it was the same in every course, every visit. She told him it was the most consistent thing she'd encountered in 19 years of eating, and that consistency was, in its own terrible way, extraordinary. He listened without moving. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "That's not possible," he said. "No," she said. "Is it—" He stopped. Started again. "Is it only fear?" She thought about this carefully, the way she thought about everything she put into words. "It's the fear of someone who has already survived the worst thing," she said. "There's a difference." He looked at her for a moment. Then he looked back at his work. She watched something move through him. Not breaking, nothing so clean as breaking, just a long, slow shift, like a building settling. She left the kitchen. She finished her meal alone. She tasted fear in every course, unchanged. Whatever she'd said to him, it had not altered his hands. She wrote the review over 2 days, which was twice as long as she usually took. Sable, Star by Catherine Jane. There are restaurants that feed you, and restaurants that do something else, something harder to name, something that sits below the threshold of what we usually ask food to do. Sable is the second kind. Christophe Doval's kitchen is technically flawless. The execution across 8 courses is as precise and controlled as anything I have encountered in this city. If you are looking for evidence of a master craftsman operating at the height of his discipline, it is here, in every plate. But Sable is not a comfortable restaurant. It is not trying to be. There is something in the food. I will not pretend to be able to explain it, only to report it, that asks something of the diner. A willingness to sit with difficulty, a tolerance for being made to feel something that does not have an easy name. Some diners will find this unbearable. Some, I suspect, will find it the most honest meal they have eaten in years. What I can tell you is this. Doval is cooking from somewhere real. In an industry that has perfected the performance of feeling, that is rarer than 4 stars suggests. Go, if you can bear it. Go, if you think you can. She filed the review at 11 p.m. She poured herself a glass of water. She stood in her kitchen for a while, not doing anything. Then she got out a pan. She turned on the burner. She cooked herself something small, eggs, which she had always found instructive, because the margin between a good egg and a ruined one was so narrow that it required complete attention. She ate standing at the counter. She tasted something. She stood very still. She put the fork down. She made herself identify it the way she identified everything, precisely, without flinching, with the professional honesty she applied to other people's work far more easily than her own. Fear. Low and steady and entirely familiar. She stood in her kitchen alone, and tasted what she had been cooking from, and did not look away from it. She did not know yet what to do with it. She stood there for a long time,